For Colin, I had Sour Patches, because he told me his favorite candy were Sour Patches. So in every set, I would hide Sour Patches so that I could like pick on them. Hey guys, my name is Jaden Michael. I play Colin Kaepernick in Colin in Black and White, and here's how I prepared. My first audition for Colin in Black and White was in July of 2020. The first audition for the show was a self-tape. So basically you have to record yourself doing the lines with someone to read the other lines with you. Send the tape over and casting will watch it and they'll judge you and figure out if you're worthy. There are a few scenes that we auditioned with and that ended up going to the show. One of them was the scene where I'm convincing the coach to let me into the program so I can become a better football quarterback over the summer break.
Being a quarterback is all I've ever wanted, my whole life.
Being a quarterback isn't just what I want to be, it's what I have to be. I can feel it in my blood. I was born to be a quarterback, something like that. It was one of those lines. And then there's a scene with Jake.
I'll catch up with you later, bro.
Yo, where we going?
I gotta take care of something right quick. All right? You're gonna stay right here.
Yo, why you always ditching me?
And I was like, you ain't a real friend. You breaking my heart. You ditching me for some other crew. And Jake is like, yo, keep your head straight. And I was like, that's all I remember. I don't quite remember. That was the first audition. And then there was a callback with Ava DuVernay and Aisha Coley over Zoom in my living room. I was like, holy cow, Ava's on my laptop. This is so cool. And then after that, I had a physicality test. So they wanted to see like if I can actually throw a ball properly, because I'd never played team sports before. So I had to call up my uncles during the middle of a major pandemic or global pandemic. And I was like, hey guys, you remember when you guys wanted to teach me how to throw a baseball? Right, I need you guys to come through for that real quick. And then I had a Zoom meeting with Colin. It was supposed to be 30 minutes and it turned into like 2.5 hours. We were talking about, you know, what it means to be Black in America, but also like lighter subjects, pop culture. I found out that he and I were watching The Backyardigans at roughly the same time, which was pretty funny because like, I see him as like so much older than me and he's like, we shared pop culture together. The film I shot before Colin Black and White was a movie called Vampires vs. the Bronx. And the day it came out was the day before my birthday. And I got a call from someone. And my mom's like, we have to go to this room over here and have a conversation with someone. And I'm like, Mom. And Ava DuVernay was on the phone and she was like, so Jaden, you know, I just want to say that I really appreciate all the work that you put in towards the auditioning process, and you know, I really admire your work ethic. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I didn't get the role. You know, she's being nice. And then all of a sudden, she's like, you got the role. And I was like, She's like, yeah, you're Colin Kaepernick in Colin in Black and White. And as soon as I hung up, I started screaming. I started screaming, my mom started screaming, my uncle started screaming, and then my aunt started screaming. They didn't know why they were screaming. We were just all really happy to be a part of the process. 3 days a week for 3 months, I trained all day. I spoke to Colin and I was telling him, like, you know, something that I find really important is really embracing the physical side of the show. I don't want it to be faked, you know. If I want to do the work and I want to put in the work because that will help me better understand what it's like to be an athlete. And you know, when I'm portraying the character, I know what it feels like to put in the effort and put in the time for your sport, let alone if it was just 3 months of lead up, but still it provides a good sense of what is the dedication required to be an athlete. I also want to look good though. Like, you know, I want to look real. I don't want someone to be like, hey, he palmed the ball there. So the first month or 2 months before shooting was just me practicing baseball, practicing basketball, practicing football every day for several hours, just trying to understand the basics, basically learning 18 years of sports in a few months. We would wake up pretty early and we would go to a park, gotta get those legs warmed up and your arms warmed up. And then we would do some like T drills, like football drills, L drills, just to get the body warmed up. And then we would shoot around with basketball for about an hour. And then we would do baseball. Baseball was really fun, like learning how to pitch, because it's so much energy. It's really a whole body workout. And we would work on getting the right stance. That was something I struggled with a lot in the beginning. Colin was sort of an alien in the football realm during his high school and college years because he would throw the ball really weird, and he was also super skinny like I am. And so coaches would question his ability to effectively run routes while there's like several guys chasing him. And you know, it's unusual for a quarterback to run out of the pocket. It's only now that there are a lot of dual threat quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes. He was one of the first to really bring dual threat quarterbacking to the NFL. So for that reason, he was sort of shunned. So I had to learn what is the proper way to get out of the pocket and when to know when to run. And also, he would throw the football really weirdly because he had been a pitcher for so long. He threw the football like a pitcher. So first I had to learn how to throw a football properly and how to get the spin right. And then I had to learn how to throw it like him because he sort of winds up the ball and then throws it. And a lot of coaches were concerned because they're like, hey, you're showing that you're gonna throw the football, like, you know, you're showing it off. And ultimately what it ended up doing is he became like one of the most effective pump fakes in the league because he had this giant swing and everyone's like, oh, he's gonna throw, and he would fake. You know, I was never like a big team sports guy, but suddenly my YouTube feed turned into like, Lamar Jackson throws 60-yard touchdown. I'm like, whoa! Something I would have never been interested in like 2 months earlier. Colin is an executive producer on the project, so he was getting dailies and he was getting advance cuts. So he was seeing it as it unfolded. Actually, while we were doing the training physically, he would also get videos. So he was seeing my progress and he was giving notes and commenting on what needed improvement. I think it was more like, you know, minute things like, you know, keep your arm down while you're throwing the ball. Information from a professional football player on how to play football. That was definitely very scary because like the real guy could very much fire me because he's my boss. So yeah, it was a little scary at first, but he's an awesome, very humble person. I started working with Liz Himmelston, who's a great dialect coach, and she really helped me hone in Colin's dialect and his cadence and his tone and the way he moves his mouth. And she actually gave me the whole history of why he sounds the way he sounds. He's from Wisconsin, but he has like a southern accent, which is crazy. And so Liz explained to me that during slavery, there were a lot of slaves who decided to go to Wisconsin and northern states to escape slavery, and they brought their southern accents up to Wisconsin. So his dialect is like a mishmash of a southern accent and like a northern Wisconsin accent, which was difficult but very fun because I love challenges. Like every other syllable of every other word, he would highlight it. I remember there's this one paragraph that he says, we're really just focused on the game. I had several of his interviews recorded, and I would just play it on my phone whenever I felt like I needed to feel more like Colin or I wanted to use more of his voice. It's funny watching him grow up like throughout the interviews, like even from like 2014 to 2016. He starts slowing down a lot, like when he's talking in interviews. He goes from someone who speaks very quickly, like me, and slowly you can see his brain is calculating and being very decisive on his words. Colin is very specific with his facial structure is very interesting, like the way he smiles, it's very big and bright, and he shows a lot of teeth, which is not something I do. And then also his eyebrows, you know, his whole face is very flat when he's being spoken to, but as soon as he's speaking, his face sort of lights up, and you know, his eyebrows only move in like 2 directions. They go up and down, they don't go like sideways as many of ours do. They're not as expressive. Just learning all of that and mimicking them and trying to replicate it, which was difficult because I feel like, you know, when you're playing like Jackie Robinson in 42 or, you know, Martin Luther King in Selma, these are people who, you know, we've seen through history, you know. It's not someone who we can directly compare to while you're watching the show. And, you know, as Colin gets older through the show, his moves get a little bit more challenging and his athletic ability increases. This is a story that's told over 4 years. So I didn't want Colin to look the same over these 4 years. I really wanted him to grow and to change. And so I fasted for the first month before shooting. just so I could shred a lot of weight and I could look skinnier and smaller. You know, I was very mindful of like my size. I was always trying to stay small. Even though I was towering over my classmates, I was still trying to keep my shoulders down and my head small. You know, I'm not playing Colin Kaepernick, I'm playing Colin. I'm playing teenage Colin, and this is the roots. These are the kindlings that create the fire that we know today. I wanted to start out with a character who was sort of like a blackboard, someone who's very innocent and impressionable and just starting to experience the world, just starting to realize that there are faults in society and that he is a target in his own community. And as he grows up, his arms start getting bigger and I started eating more food and gaining my weight back and working out a little bit more, just to gain some of that athleticism and some of that tone that you get as you grow up. And you know, being mindful of my shoulders, keeping those up, always staying high and tall. And I think that contributed to his growth, not only emotionally to his arc, but also physically to his arc. Wardrobe is super important. I did a show called The Get Down and I played a gangster. And I had these giant bell bottoms and they really made me feel like I was in the 70s. It was like you start feeling the strut and the stride. And so wardrobe definitely makes you feel like the character. I always have stuff in my pockets whenever I'm in character. It just helps me feel grounded to the world. For Colin, I had, oh my God, what did I have? Oh, I used to hide Sour Patches because he told me his favorite candy were Sour Patches. So in every set, I would hide Sour Patches so that I could like pick on them whenever. So there's several moments in the show where you'll just see me eating a Sour Patch. And those were just Sour Patches I chose Colin would choose to hide his stuff in little corners of his room. Come on, Mom. All right, guys, if you want to know how to have a complete and healthy breakfast, Sour Patch, watermelon. In his pocket, he had a bracelet that his mom had gave him. Not that his mom actually had gave him, but it was something that I wanted to contribute to that because he spoke to me about how much he loved his parents. Even being an adopted child, he had such a deep connection with his parents, so I wanted to keep that sense of love and family in his characters. I looked up to him and I thought he was like a legend. He was a demigod, or you know, someone who was big and powerful. And once I got to meet him and really understand him, it was like, oh wow, you're like me. You know, you're human. You know, we share a lot of life together. We grew up and we had similar experiences or similar reactions to situations, and it was sort of like, wow, I kind of have a similar backstory to you and your Colin Kaepernick. Preparing for Colin and really researching him has changed how I look at the world and society. I walk into situations differently and I approach situations differently. I had a good idea of who Colin was. I was always involved in politics. I've always thought it was important to use your platform for change. Seeing that an athlete, someone who's usually looked upon as, you know, stick to your craft, focus on your athleticism, someone who would completely, you know, go against that and speak up for someone and risk it all for someone else. I found that very admirable and respectable. And I immediately sort of fell in love with what he stood for. I feel like any character you work on, you have to fall in love with them. And so it was very easy for me to fall in love with Colin because I knew what he was saying and I knew what he was coming from, and I understood his motivations and his politics. I think I have a greater understanding of exactly why Colin's not stood up but took a knee, rather. But also emotionally, I feel like it's made me someone who's definitely more dedicated and has a lot more drive. Something I learned from him was just he was relentless and he never gave up. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. This is how I prepared for Colin in black and white.